Okay, we just got back from trail G34. You can see where someone took care of the first sign with a shotgun. Hey, that's not very nice. Okay, that was G34. Now we're heading down back on G1. Butterfly right there. It's like a monarch. Make sure we don't run him over. Oh no, it's not a monarch. At one time I knew it. There's some thistle. At one time I knew where all the butterflies were. Say today is one of the nicest days of riding so far this year. I mean, it's like perfect temperature, perfect humidity, low humidity. I don't think you can beat it. For the rocks. The leaves are starting to fall. You can see that. So Trail 16 comes out. Can't take that. No friggin' way I can take that. Watch out for that spot. That'll you gotta stay to the left, or you'll drop about 2 feet. It's on a turn too, which is really nice. It's Trail G9. Crashed on there twice last time I tried to go up it. It might be here. Yep. You don't want to go to the right. I don't think you'd survive it, but it would surprise you as you're launching 2 feet in the air. So now that it's cooled off, I have a bunch of projects at home. I'm going to start making a list. You know, the problem is fall is so short. I leave a lot of stuff for the fall because the summer's so damn hot. So I leave it for the fall, and then I determine that, you know, the fall is so short that you get only half the stuff done. And then you say, well, I'll do it in the springtime. So try to get some stuff done. Tomorrow I'm planning on taking a road trip up to Bristol Motor Speedway, or actually Bristol Dragway, the same facility, but different form of racing. Go up to Bristol Dragway, Hot Rod Power Tours, or yeah, is it the Power Tour? No, Hot Rod Drag Week is going through there. So it's 5 days of you drive to one city and then you drag race to try to get the lowest time in a quarter mile, and then you load up the car and then drive to the next track. And you know, these aren't short drives. They're like 300 or 400 miles. Man, you don't want to get stuck in that puddle. They're like 300 or 400 miles. Yeah, let's say 300 between tracks. So it's, and you have to bring everything with you. You can't bring a support vehicle. So, you know, you can't bring like a motor home and a truck with all your parts. You have to carry everything with you. So a lot of guys bring trailers. They, you know, they have race cars, but they tow an little enclosed trailer with all their supply, their tools and fuel, and an extra set of tires. So a lot of them just use slicks for the track, and then road tires for the road, because if it rains, the slicks are pretty much useless. You know, you slide off the road and destroy a $100,000 car. And cars are quote-unquote street legal. Some of them are more street legal than others. So the top of the class, the unlimited class, is basically you run anything you want to bring. So, you know, anything that you want to bring that's quote-unquote street legal. So they check it for, you know, it's got to have lights, brake lights, wipers, quote-unquote, horn. I think that's about it. And then, you know, they check it for, make sure that it's safe. So if you run so fast, you have to have one parachute. You know, if you run faster than a certain speed, you have to have, you know, 2 parachutes. So I've been watching Tom Bailey. He's my favorite. He's the guy I want to kind of, hopefully I'm going to be able to see him tomorrow. But Tom Bailey is driving with Steve Morris. Steve Morris is his engine builder. So he runs in the 6s, so 6 seconds, 0 to, he's doing, I think he was like 220 miles an hour, or 217, something like that. So 0 to 217 miles an hour in 6, I think he ran a 6.7 seconds. That was on the first day of drag week. It might have been this, no, today's the second day, so it was the first day. So, I think he's leading his class unlimited. So, I mean, that's a street car, so. Although it looks like a drag car, so, I mean, it looks like a, you know, friggin' Pro Mod type car. I mean, basically it's a Pro Mod drag chassis with a Camaro fiberglass body on it. So I don't know. I'm not, well, I must have a VIN number. I don't know how the hell he I think the chassis has its own VIN number, but I mean, it's not a 69 Camaro. It looks like one. But nothing came off the assembly line from GM. It is a fast car, man. Basically a Pro Mod, but I mean, he drives it on the street, right? So, I mean, he drives it further than I drive my Nova. So you got to give him credit. He's not afraid to drive it. Of course, he's got Steve Morris with him, so if anything. Well, I mean, these are pretty complicated too. They have 2 fuel systems. So on the street, they switch over to, it's got a tank in the back, like a 16-gallon tank in the back, and he'll run pump gas in that, like 93 octane pump gas on the street. And then when they get to the track, they switch it over to a small tank in the front that's got methanol in it. And I think Tom Bailey's car's got, well, it's a twin turbo big block. I think he dynoed it at, I think it's got 2,500 horsepower. 2,500. So that's, you can look him up on YouTube, Tom Bailey Racing. He's out of Detroit. So I mean, they trailer the car there. It's okay to trailer the car to the start. They started in Darlington. It's Darlington, South Carolina. It might have been North Carolina. I forget. Everybody has to get there. I think it was Sunday by noon to get teched in, and then the next day they race, and then today they drive, or yesterday afternoon probably they drove to the next track, and then this morning they'll race there, and then they load everything up, switch over to the street tune. And what's nice about Bailey's car, he's got 2 different sets of injectors, so when he's racing, it's all computer controlled. When he's racing, it runs on 2 sets of injectors. And when he's driving on the street, I believe it just runs on 1 set of injectors on street gas. So, on the street he probably has, maybe only 700 horsepower, but I mean, it's not like he's driving like a maniac on the street. They kind of just cruise along. They're towing a trailer, these are grown men. They're not, frickin' idiots. So, on the street he's doing, 700 horsepower, maybe 800. And then when they switch over, basically switch over the tanks, they have a few fuel lines they switch over, and then they just tell the computer to, it's really pretty nice. You just go inside and flip a switch to the drag tune, and all of a sudden they're running on 2 sets of injectors, 16 injectors. It's pretty sick. But the problem with Tom was, God, I forget what day it was. I've been watching him for the past week, but I've been watching his YouTube. They tried to test it. They were going to leave, I think it was Friday afternoon. They had planned on leaving Detroit like Friday afternoon to drive 14 hours to the first track, which I think was in South Carolina. And so he said, well, I'm gonna, he hadn't run the car in a while, because he's got several cars, but this car he hadn't ridden in a while. So he says, oh, I'll test it. So they towed it down to the racetrack, and he did a burnout, and then he did 1 run, and I think he did another burnout to do a second run, and all of a sudden the motor starts ticking. And it wasn't a rocker arm, it was something down in the lower end of the engine started ticking, so they weren't too happy. This is like 8 or 9 o'clock on Friday, and I think it was Friday. But what they did was they brought it back to the shop. Now it's like 10 or 11 o'clock at night. Brought it back to the shop, put it on the lift, pulled the oil pan, and found out that they spun a bearing. It was a brand new bearing, but somehow it spun the bearing, a rod bearing, and actually screwed up the crankshaft. It ate into the crankshaft, so you just couldn't change a bearing, you know. So they called Steve Morris and said, you know, what are we going to do here? Drag weeks, you know, we got to be in line Sunday at noon, and it's now like the early hours of like Saturday, 1 a.m. And Steve is a trooper, man. He said, well, get the engine here as quickly as you can, and they're 3 hours away. So Steve Morris's shop is in Michigan, but he's 3 hours away from Detroit, so they, you know, and it's not an easy engine to get out of. I mean, it's a complex engine. It's a twin turbo big block. There's plumbing everywhere, right? Fittings and plumbing and headers have got to come off. I mean, it is a big job. I mean, they had 3 or 4 guys working on it, but so they pulled the engine out, put it in the back of the van, drove it 3 hours to Steve Morris's shop. Steve pulled, you know, put it on the engine stand, pulled the heads off, pulled, you know, all the pistons and connecting rods out of it, pulled the crank out, and then he called his crank guy and said, you know, when can you surface the crank? And I think he said that he could do it Saturday morning. That's what it was. He couldn't do it late at night or something, so he had to do it Saturday morning. So Steve was there when the guy opened, and he knows the guy. So they ground the crankshaft journal, or the rod journal on the crank. Steve brought that back to his shop, put the engine all back together. And then put it in his truck, drove it all the way to Detroit, and then they put the engine back into Tom Bailey's Camaro, and then basically started it up, made sure everything was fine. They didn't drive it or anything, loaded it in the trailer. I think they took off. Well, they had to be there Sunday at noon, so I think they left, you know, like Saturday at 11 o'clock or midnight. Drove all the way to South Carolina from Detroit. He may have come down through by my house, I suspect. He probably took I-75, but needless to say, they made it in time. So think about that. You're just heading to a 5-day event like that. You don't get much sleep, and they're already sleep deprived. You know, they had been up for 2 or 3 days straight. So I give those guys credit. This is high level stuff. This isn't you know, this isn't a small block Chevy where you're, you know, just turn the key and go. This is really some See, the clouds are just kind of moving off a little bit. This is some high-level stuff. These are not... these are some complex engines. So he snapped off a 670 at 217 at the first track on a brand new engine. And there's a bunch of other things they did to the car too that were untested. So, you know, it's not the best position to be in. You kind of want to have your car 100% sorted out, you know, tested multiple times, set up the, you know, set up the suspension and the shocks, and you know, you don't want to go to Hot Rod Drag Week in the unlimited class with a brand new car. You know, testing it. That's where they are, and pretty much all the guys are in the same position. They all have brand new stuff, and you know, as is normal, you know, there's shit that goes wrong up until the last minute. So honestly, I think everyone in his class is probably in about the same position. But it's fun to watch, so hopefully tomorrow I'll go up to Bristol and check that out. I think it's $20 to get in. It goes from 8 to 2. So I'm not sure I can get up there for 8. I might be able to. It's a 2-hour drive. So I'd have to leave my house at 6. And usually to come here I leave at 7. So we'll have to see about that. I might be able to do it. I don't know when the unlimited guys will run. I'll watch today, and they'll have a live feed. I'll see when Bailey runs and the unlimited. See, the thing is, the unlimited guys,